Alright guys, so you have survived part 1, dodged a few composition disasters, and hopefully your landscape photos are already looking a bit nicer. But here's the thing, there is more. Just when you thought you were safe, we've got 6 more sneaky mistakes that could be lurking in your images, waiting to sabotage your shot. Ever taken a photo where the sky feels like it's been squished into a tiny strip? Or maybe you have accidentally made your foreground look like it's trying to eat the rest of the scene? Yeah, we've been there too. In this video, we are diving into 6 more composition blunders that can make or break your landscape photography. And just like last time, we are not just pointing fingers, we are fixing them. So stick around, because by the end of this video, you will have 12 essential rules to keep your composition solid. And if you make it all the way to the end, we've got a bonus tip that even experienced photographers sometimes overlook. So don't go anywhere. And now let's jump in. Mistake number 7. Cutting off key elements. Let's start with a mistake you probably know very well. Cutting off parts of important subjects. Maybe it's the top of a mountain, a lone tree, or a rocky foreground element. You thought it was all in the frame, but no. Later you find out you have sliced through it and the whole image feels incomplete. Here's the thing. We often focus so hard on the main subject that we forget to check the edges of the frame. And suddenly, boom, the tip of the mountain is gone. It's like writing a sentence and leaving off the last word. Your brain notices, even if you don't. Why does it happen? Usually, it's because we are rushing. Maybe the light is fading, or we are using a focal length that is just too tight. Or we are too close to the subject and not thinking about the entire composition, just the middle of the frame. Like this photo here. I honestly don't know what I was thinking. There is a strip of light here, okay, sure, but it feels random. I remember scrambling into position because the sun was racing toward a cloud bank, and in my rush I just didn't think through the framing. And yeah, it shows. Of course, it's not always possible to capture a photo that's perfectly clean along the edges, without any distracting elements. Take this one, for instance. On the right, we've got some bushes that are cropped off. Here, you see? Now, in this case, the crop doesn't really bother me. Still, the important part is how you crop it. If you leave just a tiny bit of the bush, it will look like odd and accidental. And if you include, say, I don't know, 90% of it, and only clip off a small section, it still feels awkward. Ideally, your composition could look something like this. Even in fairly messy terrain filled with bushes and trees, here, in the foreground especially, with a bit of careful planning, you can still come away with a final image that's clean around the edges and free of distractions. But to do that, you need time and a bit of preparation. Mistake number 8. Too little sky, a cramped composition. Sometimes, in an attempt to emphasize the foreground, we end up leaving too little space for the sky. It makes the image feel tight and unbalanced, as if the scene is getting cut off at the top. Here is a shot where I made that mistake. The sky is barely visible, and the image feels cramped. A better approach: give the sky enough space, especially if it has interesting cloud formations or colors that add to the composition. This mistake is incredibly common, whether you are shooting a single frame or a panorama. I always recommend double-checking your composition to make sure there is enough sky included. So why did I make such a basic mistake in this shot? I remember it clearly. The beautiful light only appeared for a brief moment. On top of that, the wind was brutal and I had to reshoot every frame of the panorama multiple times. The strong gas kept shaking the tripod, and at least half of the shots came out blurry. I was running out of time, and before I could finish capturing the sky, the sun had already set. What a shame. An ideal balance between sky and landscape might look something like this, especially when the sky is filled with interesting clouds. My rule is simple. If the sky is completely clear without a single cloud, I leave less of it in the frame. After all, it's just empty space, but it still plays a role in the overall composition. If the sky is filled with beautiful clouds, especially if they are lit by the sun, then I let them take up a bigger portion of the frame. Mistake number 9. Distracting bright spots at the edge. Our eyes are naturally drawn to the brightest areas of an image. And that's a problem when a bright spot appears at the edge of the frame, because instead of guiding the viewer's eye into the photo, it pulls them out of the scene. It happens a lot when shooting waterfalls, where a bright sky is visible in the background, or when shooting mountain scenes where a bright patch of sky is at the top. The fix: frame carefully to keep distracting bright spots out of the edges. And here is an example. In this waterfall shot, there's a bright area of the sky right in the center of the image. See it here. And especially along the top edge, pulling the viewer's eye away from the main subject in that way, out of the photo. But in this other composition, the waterfall is framed more tightly, keeping all the visual weight inside the scene. And in this photo from Iceland, there's some sky above the upper waterfall, here. But because it's dramatically dark, it closes the composition from the top and, figuratively speaking, keeps the viewer from leaving the photo. Mistake number 10. Flat, lifeless light. Even the most breathtaking landscape can look dull and uninspiring without the right light. Light and shadow create depth, making a two-dimensional photo feel three-dimensional. This is why some compositions feel magical when you see them in person before sunrise or after sunset, but then the resulting photo lacks that impact. Without directional light creating highlights and shadows, the landscape loses its shape. If you have ever taken a shot that looked incredible in real life but fell flat in your camera, it could be the reason. The fix: wait for better light, shooting during golden hour, or look for scenes where the light adds texture and depth to the image. Take a look at this panorama of mine, taken almost, 15 years ago. On paper, it has everything it's supposed to: a foreground, midground, background, an ideal sky to land ratio, mist, dynamic landscape, and yet it doesn't really grab the viewer's attention. Why? It lacks light. So, does it mean it's impossible to capture an attractive panorama or single shot before sunrise or after sunset? Not at all. It's definitely possible. But the sky needs to be exceptionally dramatic and compelling for the composition to stand a real chance of captivating the viewer. Like in this photo from our expedition to Tuscany in Italy. According to the weather forecast, it was almost certain that the sun would vanish into clouds at sunrise. But the structure and layering of the clouds suggested a strong chance of beautifully colored skies just before sunrise. In this panorama from our recent Lofoten photo expedition in February 2025, direct sunlight is absent, which means the landscape has minimal, if any, light and shadow. But thanks to a striking sky, a compelling landscape, and a very wide panoramic perspective, the result still turned out to be an engaging image. That said, light and shadow remain key elements in giving a landscape depth and that essential three-dimensional feel. like in its iconic composition from the Lofoten Islands in Norway. Mistake number 11. Merging foreground and midground or background. Lost subject separation. Have you ever taken a photo where your main subject just disappears into the midground or background? It happens when your foreground blends too much with the midground or background, causing a lack of subject separation. For example, if a dark rock stands against a dark mountain, the subject loses its definition. Or if a person in a landscape is wearing colors that match the surroundings, they won't stand out. A good fix? Look for contrast. Use light and shadow to create separation or adjust your position so that your subject is framed against a background with a different brightness or color. So, take this example. The snow-covered tree here on the left in the foreground blends into the midground. Okay? It's slightly brighter, but in this case, it's not enough. Especially because the sky is even brighter and draws the viewer's eye away. Overall, the composition doesn't really work, and the only solution would have been to shoot from a different location or angle. Now, look at this composition I discovered a few years ago during one of our expeditions to Tuscany in Italy. We see trees here that would normally get lost in the midground or mainly in the background. But because they are lit by the setting sun, the composition works beautifully in this case. This other composition from our expedition to Tuscany also works. Even though the main subject, let's say here, the farmhouse with cypress trees, sits in front of the hills, which are covered in mist, making them low contrast and tonally different. That separation allows the main subject to stand out clearly. So in this panorama, everything falls into place. Mistake number 12. Overly dominant foreground. In landscape photography, the foreground can sometimes become too dominant and overpower the rest of the scene, while a strong foreground adds depth and helps lead the viewer's eye into the image. An excessively massive foreground can throw off the overall balance. Instead of creating a natural flow between the foreground, midground and background, it can make the scene feel bottom-heavy and visually unbalanced. To fix this, adjust your shooting position, or use a slightly longer focal length, or reframe the composition to ensure the foreground complements the scene rather than overwhelming it. A well-balanced landscape image should have a smooth transition between all elements, naturally guiding the viewer's eyes through the entire composition. In this photo, you can probably see it right away. The foreground is quite massive and dominant, which causes the rest of the image to fade away, even though there is light shining in the background. In this photo from our expeditions to the Norwegian Lofoten Islands, the foreground is also quite heavy. Fortunately, in this case, it's broken up by small ponds of different colors, which naturally guide the viewer's eye toward the sunlit mountains in the background. So compositionally it works, but it's right on the edge. And now bonus tip. Take test shots before the light hits. Don't wait until golden hour to start composing. By then it's too late. You will panic, rush and mess it up. Instead, get to your location early. Take some test shots, even in bad light. Try different angles, focal lengths and compositions. Lock in your tripod, and that way when the light explodes, you are ready. No hesitation, no guessing. Just click. It sounds simple, but this trick will save your best shots and make the difference between good and exceptional. And there you have it. 6 more composition mistakes, bringing us to 12 total, including those from part 1. Hopefully your images are already looking nicer and you are seeing your scenes in a whole new way. Which mistakes surprise you the most? Let us know in the comments. And hey, if you enjoyed the video, give it a like, subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss the next one. And if you really want to take your skills to the next level, join us on one of our photography expeditions. All the info is down below. Until next time, happy shooting and keep chasing the light.
By the way, have you heard that you can join us on our exclusive photography expeditions to Lofoten and Iceland? If you want to know more, check the link below.